Okay, it is 9 o'clock. Welcome to the 42nd CALLERLAB Convention, Springfield, Missouri. It's March 31st, and our interest session is Refiguring Singing Call Figures. Okay, my name is Randy Dougherty. I'm the moderator. We have two distinguished panelists from Tallahassee, Florida, owner and producer of ESP Records. And the more I know this guy, the more I admire him. How about a nice hand for Elmer Sheffield? Also, another record producer that's on the panel that just walked in a few seconds before. And I try to distance myself from him more and more every year, but from somewhere in California, Fresno, is that where close? Visalia, which is Central California. Rick Hampton from Fine Tunes. I'd like to get going right away and get into the deep water, and then we're going to turn it over to the panelists. Last year I was the panelist, and John Marshall was the moderator for this session. And I was very pleased. About 3 weeks later, I got an email from Ed Foote saying he wasn't at the session, but he got the MP3s, and he listened to it, and he followed it, and he sent me a compliment saying it was one of the best interest sessions he'd heard. And I thought that was quite remarkable because he's got thousands of singing calls that he uses for pattern music. Really? Anyway. I'd like to open it up more than just refiguring singing call figures, because I think we should talk about openers and middle breaks and closers too. Because it seems like our computers only say, you can, when you want to put in your cue sheet, they give you the three options: sides, face, grand, square, four ladies promenade, or the third one is circle left. And then you can write the lyrics. And almost all the record producers, it seems like, if it's a circle left, they do a 56 beat type figure for an opener. And we all know it's supposed to be 64 beats, right? And so the magic numbers that I shoot for is like 480, like a ream of paper. 480 is how I remember that. That's 7 sequences of 64 beats plus the intro plus the tag. And sometimes they have intros that go 8 beats, 16. Some are really quick with 4. But anyway, somewhere there's an intro and a tag. And so you have to add those beats in there, because you got to know when you're going to say sides, face, grand, square. And so you got to count the beats out. And that's what this is going to be about, is how do you figure out how to rewrite some of this stuff? Where do you have to go to get a timing chart? Timing charts are available through CALLERLAB. It'll tell you how long it takes you to circle left in a ring. We have a couple of handouts here. The handout that I have is basically a list of all kind of normal type singing call figures, and then how to reconfigure them, doing them ambidextrously, which means doing it the opposite way. If something is right-handed, it's going to be left-handed. If something going clock, it's going to be counterclock. If you're doing something right, you're going to do the wrong part of it, okay? So the Royal record figure, the heads promenade halfway. I think they have a copyright over this, and I don't know, do you pay Jerry every time you use this? Heads promenade half, down the middle, square through 4, and then you swing through, and the boys run, and you Ferris wheel, and then what? Square through 3. Has anybody actually timed that out? Do you think it's close to 64? Closer to 60. Does anybody have a timing chart? So we're going to have to rely on our memories. Heads promenade half. How many beats? Anybody from the audience? And I'm going to be running the microphone back and forth, so I'm going to ask you to give your name and your answer.
J. King. My guess was 8.
What a lucky guess, yes. 8 beats, so we're at 8. And then down the middle, square through 4. How many beats does square through 4 take?
Barry McCombs, Calgary, Alberta, Canada, 8 beats.
You're close, but it's 10 because it's a static square type of a thing, okay? So now we're at 10 and 8. Now we're going to do swing through. How many beats is swing through?
6.
Good guess, but I think it's closer to 4 to 6. Let's give them 6, okay? So we're at, yeah, okay, so 8, 10, and 6. What are we up to? 24. Boys run. It's a tough one, Brian.
22 beats.
And okay. I lost my number we were at. We're at 24, so let's add 4. So that's 28. Ferris wheel about 6, 34. One call left. Square through 3 about 6, 7, 8 at the most. We're at 42. We swing. That takes 5 or 6 beats. 48. Then you got a promenader, and of course in Texas they just go, boom, you're home. And then they watch you for 16 beats, because that's how many promenade takes. So 16 I added on to the 48. Oh my gosh, that's a perfect copyrighted figure. All right. So that's a 64 beater. Okay? That's if they do it right. And we did give some plus and minus type adjustments. And that's what it's all about, gang, is if you want to do that, you need to know those beats that it takes to do those things. If we were going to do that same figure ambidextrously, what would I call? Heads. It's not reverse promenade, it's wrong way promenade. Now, that's your option if you want to go wrong way, because it's going to still take them 8 beats to get there. So I might not say wrong way promenade, especially with my group. Heads promenade half. But doing a square through 4, I will change this to a left square through 4. Then I will change it to a left swing through. Instead of the boys run, and the Ferris wheel becomes going uphill. So the only call that's left is what? The square through 3. And I might call left square through 3, depending if I think they might make it. If you go left, right, left, the swing becomes kind of weird, don't it? So I might just go back and just do something equivalent to that. Or something like this. Instead of doing the square through 3, follow this in your head. Swing through in the middle. That boy run. And all the girls pass through. You're right there with the corner, aren't you? So I just redid that. Instead of doing the square through 3 or the left square through 3, I just did swing through. Boy run, girls, it's straight ahead, pass through, swing your corner promenade. It's a perfect thing. If I wanted to do it ambidextrously, by the time I got to my 4th side figure, instead of saying swing through and the boy run and the girl pass through, I'd say, as a group, left swing through. Instead of the boy run, instead of the girls pass, the boys. Now, you got your corner by the left hand, so you can't really swing her. So you could just say courtesy turner or Alaman left and roll promenade or something like that. But you still have your 16-beat promenade. I have over 100 of these things on my handout, and I hope you'll take a look at it. It says warning, use good judgment, and that's very important. I'm going to do one more to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about ambidextrous, and then we're going to turn it over to our panelists. This is one that I use a lot. Head square through 4, touch a quarter, scoot back, boy run, reverse flutter, sweep a quarter, swing corner promenade. I've timed it out, okay? Ambidextrously, I might say it this way. Instead of saying left square through 4, if my group is not really good on that, I might say slide through, square through 3. So now they're going right, left, right. Now the left hand is available, and I will say left touch a quarter, scoot back. Who's going in? The girl is. That's different, and it's left-handed. Instead of having the boy run and reverse flutter, I'm going to have the girls run, flutter wheel, sweep a quarter, swing promenade. And you can do this with not just singing calls and openers and middle breaks, but all your choreography. So you've doubled your knowledge by just thinking ambidextrously. Every one. Okay? And I'll hand out my handout at the end, and we're going to turn it over. Would you welcome Elmer Sheffield?
Thank you. I'm glad I finally heard somebody use that word. What was it? Ambidextrously? What does that mean? Oh, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, good morning, everyone. Let me tell you, first of all, am I an expert on this situation? Absolutely not. I've recorded a lot of songs and done a lot of singing call figures, and most of them are different, but some of the old thing I borrowed from Royal, you know. But what I would like to get across to you is, let me tell you a little bit, and this may be boring to you for a second, but music, 99% of all square dance songs are recorded at 64 beat phrases 7 times through. Now, there is an exception every now and then. Some guy does a song that has 80 beats or something, but that's not what we consider the standard. So we have, when I work with my band at home, they've done music for me now for 30 years. So they know that number 1 is the opener, number 2, number 3 are figures, number 4 is a middle break, 5 and 6 are figures, and 7 is the closer. So when we talk about, when we're doing a song and we talk about, I may say, hey, that little lick you did in number 5, I don't really like it, or 3 or 2, whatever. Usually, not always, but usually 1, 4, and 7 are basically the same thing. We may say sides, face, grand, square, and go 32 beats, and when you come to number 4, which is the middle, we might do that again, sides, face, grand, square. Doesn't have to be that way, but I'm just kind of telling you, those are kind of the standard ways of doing things.
Can I interrupt you right there?
Yes, sir.
He said that his band knows that number 1 is the opener and so on. With Royal Records, Jerry has taught the band that copyrighted figure. They don't know what Ferris wheel or swing through or square through 3 is, but they know where it is on their charts. And so he says, I don't like the Ferris wheel little diddly thing that you did. They all know what he's talking about. And so every time, for every singing call, he refers back to that copyrighted figure that's not really copyrighted, but the band knows it, just like what Elmer is saying.
Yeah, my group is the same way. They don't have any idea what a square through, a swing through. I mean, they've heard me do it, and actually my band has actually played for our Christmas party at home 2 or 3 years in a row. So they know what square dance music is, but they don't know what a square through is. They don't know what any of that stuff means. They do know that they got to play 64 beats for me to get through number 1 or number 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Personally, I don't like long introductions. I don't like for dancers to be standing, while you play 32 beats of music. And that has nothing to do with refiguring singing calls. I'm just kind of giving you some background. Same way on the end, I don't like a long, drawn-out something after the dance is over, because the dancers they either clapping because they liked it or they're leaving the floor because they didn't like it. So I just don't get into that. When I do, and I'll start from the beginning. When I teach beginner classes, brand new people, it's my feeling that I do a singing call the very first time I have them up on the floor. And they've never danced before, but I teach enough stuff that I do a singing call, and it makes them, they feel like they're dancing. So, having said that, you can take any singing call, at least 99% of the singing calls that are out there on the market, and you can do a simple, heads go in and circle half, back out. Sides go in and circle half, back out. Well, they still have their partner, but they're across from home. They don't know, I've already taught them that their men have a home spot, so you got to get back halfway around. But those little simple things that they can do, and so you take a singing call that maybe some guy recorded and it had a left-handed chain reaction or whatever, and you say, oh, I've had callers over the years say, I can't use that record because I can't do the figure, or my dancers can't dance spin chain the gears or whatever. But you throw that out the window. Put any good singing call figure you like in that same song, and it should fit. Now, if the caller who recorded the piece of music had a poorly timed figure, it's going to be poorly timed in an ESP record, a Royal record, or Fine Tunes, or whatever. It's just, it doesn't fit. Like Randy said, you need to do a little, I like, if I can, at all possible, have a 16-beat promenade when you take your partner. If you meet, if dancers meet their partner 4 steps from home, they're going to stop. And you got 16 beats of la 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 to sing, and they may be impressed with your singing, and then again they may not be. So it's better to have that thing timed out so that it gives you a full nice promenade. So you can work on those things. But moving ahead, I can take the same piece of music. Let's say I did a Baby Makes Her Blue Jeans talk, and I do it for the brand new people. They've never danced before. So I put stuff in there they could do. Then if you want to move on up to mainstream, take the same song. You can put a mainstream figure in it, and it fits and it works right on up the line to the plus, advanced if you want to use that. And you use that same piece of music. So don't look at a piece of music and get somebody's cue sheet out and say, oh, I can't do that. I can't, that figure, my club can't do it, or I can't call it, because it doesn't really matter. Now, I'll confess to you guys, since all of your callers, I do a lot of sight calling. And when I sight call a singing call figure, I just sight it. I sight it out, and I bring I resolve it at the box, the proper place, and I know I got a full promenade. Does that always work? No. And sometimes we don't give them a good full promenade, but I just do a lot of that, and it works. It's worked for me for 47 years, so I keep doing it. We're stuck too much on, like Randy said. It just bothers me when I hear a swing through boys run Ferris wheel, centers pass through, swing the corner promenade. Same way in the old days, we used to use too many times head square through 4, sides promenade a half, square through do-si-do, 8 chain 4, swing your corner promenade. We just overdid that. There's lots of good figures that work good, that the dancers enjoy. One of my favorite singing call figures is head square through, or however you want to get them out to the corner. Swing through boys, trade boys, run, bend the line, star through, reverse, flutter, veer right, and promenade. I guarantee you, every time you call that, somebody's going to say, my God, how did he do that? But it's just that little different, and it's putting it in any singing call you want to put it into. I'm telling you, you can, if you like a piece of music, buy it. Don't worry about what's on that cue sheet. Best thing to do with that cue sheet is throw it away, or get the hook line off of it. That's all you need. You don't need all that other stuff.
That timing chart is just kind of a reference guide for you. I mean, if you're doing a singing call and you're rewriting it, and it's for new dancers, the timing chart's pretty well out the window. If you ever come down to South Texas or Arizona, where we have the retirement parks, the Royal Record copyrighted figure of the Ferris wheel and square through 3 ain't going to work. You know how we adapt it? You know that the heads promenade half and the square through 4 puts you over on the chicken plucker side on the other side of the street. So simply say heads past the ocean and extend, and that only took 6 beats, but it took the dancers that we have the same distance as promenade half and square through 4, just about. You have to give them those extra beats, and even then they might just stop at home instead of even when you give them a 16-beat promenade, because they got their walkers and wheelchairs just parked 10 feet from where they're dancing anyway. So you laugh, but we have people there that they come in on crutches and they put their crutches to the wall and they get out and dance, or they got their tank of oxygen tanked to their back, and you really have to adjust your timing. So the chart is just a reference guide.
Yeah. And I agree with that too, because I shouldn't even tell you this, but the timing chart's kind of a strange thing to me. A while ago when he asked y'all how many beats did it take to do a swing through, I'd be like a lot of you. I'd be guessing. I know about how many it takes, but I couldn't say, well, it takes 6 or it takes 7 or whatever. It just, in my mind, timing's just something that has come from over the years of, we all hate to hear callers who are calling a dance who call, and I give the callers at home who I try to help a little, I hate to hear a caller call, head square through, 4 hands around, swing through the outside two, the boys trade, boy run back. But they still doing a square through, But by the same token, I hate to hear a caller who says, head square through, 4 hands around. And then he's looking around or whatever, and in a few minutes he said, swing through. And then he's still looking around. That's bad timing. That's bad timing. And there again, that really is not necessarily has anything to do with refiguring singing calls, but then from a timing standpoint, it does. The best thing you can do is call a good figure or whatever that's smooth, continuous, and the dancers are moving at a good pace. They get home, they promenade like they should, a full promenade, and then you go right into the figure. It can be the royal figure or whatever, but the timing is just, I think it's critical. And I'm sure you've been maybe to dances where after a 2-hour dance, the dancers seem like they just got started. Boy, we're having a ball. Other times they're thinking, my God, is this going to ever end? Because they're just wore out. They're, because of this stop and go and nothing fits. And, it's not good. But anyway, the point I wanted to make before Rick takes over is just that most any good singing call figure will fit any singing call record. At least 99% of the time. There may be a case where it doesn't, but most of the time, if you get a good figure that fits to a royal record, you can take that same figure and put it in one of Rick's records or one of my records. It fits. It fits. And let's face it, guys like Randy are experts on these figures. I mean, this right here, he's given away a lot of valuable information that I'm sure he spent a lot of time figuring all this out. And he's given it to us so that we can take it back and say, I never thought about that, but I could use that figure tonight in my, I love this new singing call, but I really don't like the figure that he put in there. So here's some good ones there. And like he said, use good common sense, because some of them you may crash the floor. Anyway, we decided as we go along here that we would be glad to take any questions from you about any phase of this, and rather than waiting till the end, because by then we've all forgot. Yeah, we do need you to talk through the mic.
Thank you. Jeff Palmer, Colorado Springs. I like what you said about the timing chart being a guideline, because just what you said about the older people and whatnot, I find the same situation with a slick floor, a dry floor, a lot of crowd, no crowd, carpet, things like that. You have to adjust those to the dance rather than trying to adjust them to the timing chart. Thank you.
Very good, Jeff. Good comment. Come on up to the mic. Yeah, but Elmer's holding on to it.
That's okay. I'm familiar with chords. Virgil Forbes, Maryland. Couple of comments. Number one, I was stuck in a snowstorm a couple of years ago, bored out of my mind. I sat there and took all the cue sheets that were in the computer and put them in a spreadsheet, and about half of over 1,000 singing calls were one of 7 figures. You can probably guess most of them. At point, I found myself calling both for a retirement community and a teen club. Yeah, that you can't run those between each other. You know, they both require quite a bit of adjustment. My seniors, I called my 52-beat club because they could reliably dance 52 beats of choreography in a 64-beat phrase. That required dropping do-si-do almost entirely out of sing and call figures. The figure swing through, boys run, bend the line, right and left through, flutter wheel, slide through. You drop it and change it to swing through, boys run, bend the line, reverse flutter, slide through. Saves you about 6 beats. So there's a lot of little things you can play with to shorten up. Of course, adding beats for the teens, no problem. Instead of swing the corner, do a touch a quarter and throw in a scoot back. They'll love it.
Michael Thetting, Anger, North Carolina with Anger Twirlers. I came in here for the specific reason of being able to reconfigure a call. I love what you said. Shh. Well, I love what you wrote. Shh. Yeah, the cue sheet may not be your friend because sometimes I found myself really tied to that cue sheet. I said all that to say that I got a song, thanks to Monkmore, Mona Lisa Lost Her Smile. It is a standard figure in there where basically the heads promenade halfway, square through 4 hands, do a right and left through, and then do Ferris wheel, square through 3. Pretty much standard. I had one of some of the folks say, well, that's a little bit too fast, and we're trying to play catch up. So I said, well, let me see if I can figure that out. Okay, and I said all that to say that I thought when I was coming in here that timing would be critical, the beats would be critical, but then I heard you say that it's not something to, and maybe I misunderstood, but don't rely too much on the beats. So I'm trying to grasp very heavily so I can do that. I remember hearing Betsy say, don't ever say, I got to teach you this figure so I can sing this song. And I really want to be able to take a song, say, I love that song, but I've got to readjust it. All right. That's what I'm really concerned with.
Yep. You know, there's a lot of people out there, teachers that are teaching in the schools and stuff, and that's how they teach, is whatever's on that record that Phi Ed teacher has. That's what they use, and sometimes it's pretty critical.
And of course, the reason they do that is they're dancing to the vocal side of that record, so they
Exactly.
have to learn that.
Yep.
I said something.
Oz, Silicon Valley. This may be unique to me because I'm deaf, but one of the reasons why I use the cue sheet is because the filler words are what I need to keep myself on the beat. I can't keep myself on the beat without those filler words that are already on the cue sheet. So how do you refigure a singing call while keeping those filler words so that you can stay on the beat?
That's a good question, Oz. What I would suggest, Vic Cedar's website, cedar.net, somewhere in there there's a listing of a gazillion what we used to call patter, chicken in a bread pan picking out dough stuff. I would look at that because there's certainly a lot of cute little phrases in there that are specifically timed a certain amount of beats. However, if you're doing a singing call or that originally has a swing through 2x2, for example, okay, and you want to change that to a different phrasing, thank you. You could add like swing through 2x2. Figure out how long it takes to say that word, and 8-chain-4, I would suspect, would be about the same amount of verbiage, same amount of time, and also, now granted, that would take your figure in an entirely different direction, but an 8-chain-4 followed by some lyrics. So you're still saying either calls or lyrics on the beat constantly. Yeah, in that case, it's going to take take a little bit of extra work, but
I think what he's saying is like, if it says head square through, and he doesn't have the next sentence that's spelled out for him on the cue sheet, he gets off in his timing. So when it says head square through and a hey diddle diddle and the cat and the fiddle and and then you're on. Or if you say head square through, count 4 hands around you go. That second sentence, count 4 hands around you go. You need to know how many beats does that actually take up. That kind of thing. So I hope we're kind of touching on what you're looking for.
How long have you been calling?
It'll be 2 years in August.
Well, it's something you can work on. I mean, it'll take a little work, but you need to get rid of that cue sheet. Because in first place, I feel like it takes your attention away from the dancers and what you're doing. If you're up there calling and you're saying circle left and whatever, that's just my opinion. There's nothing bad about it. I went through that same period myself, same way. I used to, it scared me to death if I lost my cue sheet and even now, I don't know the words all the right words to the right songs. I just make them up as I go along.
Yeah.
But I know the timing. I know what it takes to fill it in, Okay. That's it. I just wondered how long you've been calling, because sometimes it's just a matter of passing that.
And if you're going to continue in the calling, you really got to learn some memorization. And so if you can't remember those lyrics, if you can't memorize those lyrics without having them on a piece of paper in front of you or on your screen, you're really doing yourself an injustice. And he wants you to learn not just those words and memorize them, but listen to where it is in his piece of music that he's put out for you. There's very few singing calls that, you always use what that singing call artist put down. There's a very few figures that you use exactly. We were talking the other night, and Elmer said, boy, when you hear summer sounds, listen to the music of the carousel. You got to learn those words. If you're reading them, it comes across to the floor, first of all, I think. Give him the wireless one.
Okay, so it sounds like what you're actually saying isn't so much get rid of the cue sheet, but don't read from the cue sheet. Is that correct?
Pretty much, because if you're reading, you're looking down.
That's completely different. That's fine. I can deal with that. I already do that.
Yeah, if you're looking down and not at the dancers, that's a disservice to them.
as is reading choreography.
Yeah, same with regular choreography.
My name is Mike Driscoll. I'm from Randy's home state, Minnesota. I was going to say there are singing calls. There are some out there that are not, they might have one of the breaks or something that varies. I have one that's called Heartache Tonight on Shakedown. The last break is not like the middle or the end. So you really can't, use standard on that. You really have to be careful and know your music.
You can actually use the standard. I'm familiar with the song. The standard choreography can be interchanged. What Pat did on many of Pat's songs is he will follow the original lineup of how the original song went.
Right, and I love the song, but you have to realize you can't just throw something in there.
Well, I'll get to that.
Well,
but
yeah,
you can
you
actually.
can't.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can't use the way that the opener goes. Somebody's gonna hurt someone. But you can't use it on the end one.
You can't use the lyrics of one part of a song in another part of a song. That is correct.
Never ever buy a record and do it that night unless you're Elmer or somebody.
Why not?
You got to learn that music. And lots of times I have done that where I picked up a singing call and loved it so much and played it, and then all of a sudden it comes to the closer. They got a different melody line on it.
Mm-hmm.
You got to listen to it. Okay, Rick.
All right. What are you doing? For the record, Elmer Sheffield just tangled himself up hopelessly in a cord. There's a little handout if you got it. Great. If not, cheat. Look it off somebody else. So that actually goes right into what I've got for you today. I am Rick Hampton from Fine Tune Records, and we're hanging out here at the 42nd, right? CALLERLAB convention, that's what it says. Be extremely familiar with your song and that the word metering you're currently using to that song. So what that means is, like he just said, in the case of Heartache Tonight on Shakedown, the closer on that thing uses an entirely different part of the song, the actual original song. How many of you, show of hands, buy songs that you've heard on the radio during some decade? It doesn't have to be today's thing, but in other words, do you ever buy a song you've never heard? Wait, how many people have actually bought some? Oh, it's a square dance, but I have no idea what the song is. I've never heard the song.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Okay. All right. How many people hear a song on the radio and then seek out that particular singing call? Because it's got to be one or the two. I mean, not everybody in here is. How many don't buy singing calls? You either have got to have discovered that piece of music either by being familiar with the song first and seeking out the singing call, or not being familiar with the song and hearing the singing call. There really is no other way to do it. But we didn't see anywhere close to 100% of the hands in here. Yeah.
This is Oz again. I mostly get my songs from the movies.
Okay, that's great. The ones with real acting, or? It is so mission critical to be familiar with your stuff. If you hear Elmer sing a particular tune at a dance, you might say, "Oh, that's kind of a cool song," and then you get it on your download, or you buy the CD or whatever, and then all of a sudden you don't have Elmer in your head anymore. And on the flip side is Rick Hampton, and he's doing something entirely different than what Elmer did. So you don't have that. So what do? You take this piece of paper and you kind of figure out, or this computer screen, you kind of figure out what it is that this dude on the backside, I say the backside of the record. So you listen to the reference vocal, and that's your point of reference. Those reference vocals are designed for one thing only. Don't let us kid you. They're designed to get you to buy the song. That is the only reason they're there. They're there to get you to buy the song, make it sound good. We did all about the bass recently, and many of you purchased that thing. And my gosh, that's a good thing to listen to. And we've given you the harmonies and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is that did we put a lot of detailed, painstaking thought into the figure of that song, or more into how the four-part harmony went? It was more into the four-part harmony. So be extremely familiar with the music that you are going to use, that you are currently using, and you will find things in there that will give you reminder points as to where you can do things differently. Look up lyrics online, because the cue sheet gives you very few lyrics. CSDS, which is one of the many computer softwares for calling, it has this lyrics database, and it's just phenomenal. You hit one key, and chances are the lyrics are there. Now, so I think most of you probably got here because the description of the seminar was particularly how to configure singing calls to lower basics using a fewer number of basics. All right. Somebody name a singing call that is popular enough that many of us would know what that you use. Anything. Beautiful Brown Eyes. Amarillo by Morning. Okay. Who said Amarillo by Morning? Sing it.
We need you to sing on the mic.
That was wonderful.
If not,
though.
Nobody will be able to hear you again. Hey, while he's doing that, let me ask a quick question. How many of you have ever bought a piece of music that you thought you just had to have, and you never called it?
Thank you.
All of us. I'll raise my hand with you.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
That's what Elmer's counting on.
Of course, when you buy a package of all the records from one company, you're bound to get a couple you have never even thought about. Okay, Amarillo, the figure. Head square through, you get 4 hands. You make a right-hand star, the head star left in the middle. Same 2, go right and left through. You're gonna dive through and then square through it to get me 3. Swing that corner promenade.
Thank you. I started to hear you guys singing the lyrics of the original song. They took my saddle in Houston, broke my leg in Santa Fe. And then he was, in other words, he was singing the melody as he was doing the figure. And that's awesome because now we know at least 2 different sets of words that fit that music. The head square through, go 4 hands. With the sides make a right-hand star, or they took my saddle in Houston, broke my leg in Santa Fe. What other words could we use there? Could we use a 4 ladies chain, cross the ring, go, and then the heads pass through and separate. Sides pass through and do-si-do. Star through, go forward, up, and back. Okay, there is a corner line. From a 0 box, it's a star through line, and you are ready for a get out. And that was just, I was quickly thought of something that would sing to the melody. Okay, 4 ladies chain, cross the ring, go. Talking about your filler words. The heads pass through in clover leaf, or heads pass through and separate. And I phrased it in that manner to go with the song that we were doing in that case, Amarillo by Morning. So. Brian, give me a singing call that other humans know. Tennessee River. Okay, Tennessee River.
Brian Clark, you said Tennessee River.
Yeah. And we were shocked at that, too. How many know Tennessee River? Raise your hands. Yeah, a few of you do. Okay. Tennessee River and a mountain man. We get together every time we can. The Tennessee River. That's the primary hook line on the thing. It is the Brokeback theme song, yes. Okay, so on that one, it's royal. So what's the figure? It's Heads Promenade. What is it? Heads Promenade. You go. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's the copyrighted one.
I'm confused. But again, heads circle 4, go halfway. Heads, pass through and courtesy turn. You can even let the sides do things. The point being is any piece of music that you're intimately familiar with, you can take fewer basics and do this and do the song, but you have to be so familiar with the song. He was completely on the melody when he sang the thing. Make sure your choreography that you do come up with, make sure it works. And the place not to try it is at that party or at that first night of class. How do you do that? Software, in my opinion, is wonderful for checking your work that you've physically done with checkers. Software for writing choreography is one programmer's opinion of how things are going to go.
Rick, can I put you on the spot?
Sure.
I'd like to have you do some discussing about, you've just taught spin chain through to your class people, and you want to put it into a singing call figure, but you can't find one out of the 2,500 that you have in your computer that don't use another call that they haven't had or something like that. So what's the thought process you go through to use spin chain through and give the new dancers some practice on that?
Well, the first thing is I would have to intimately know what a spin chain through does to the folks. Okay? If your heads go in the middle face corner, 0 box. If you do a spin chain through and the girls circulate 2 places, you're with the same person over on the other side of the square, except the girls now on the end and boys are now in the center, but you got the same. It's like having done an all 8 circulate twice and swing half by the right. So you really haven't done much to the people choreography other than you've traded them at that point. And if you do that again, you put them right back to where they were, and which, by the way, if you say boys run and promenade at that point, it's very convenient singing call. Spin chain through, girls circulate 2, spin chain through, boys circulate 2, boys run promenade. But the only reason I knew that is because I actually sat down and figured out what I needed, because I used when I recorded Song Sung Blue trillion years ago, I wanted to use spin chain through in a figure. So pick a call. You're going to teach Jeff Palmer. What are you going to teach tonight? Give me a call. I'll repeat it, or...
Yes, go ahead.
No, I know. What are you going to teach tonight? I just taught him spin chain through.
Oh, just a new one, just another Jeff Palmer, Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
Have you already taught him circulates?
Sure.
You already taught him circulates.
I've already taught him circulates.
How about a hinge?
Okay, a hinge. All right, cool. An easy one. Love those. All right. So you could do whatever figure that would get you to your corner in that particular case. Once you're there, a hinge and face them. Swinger. Somebody said for teens, add, touch, a quarter, and scoot back. So, in other words, take that cue sheet. What we mean by that is take this one dude's opinion of how to sell a record and toss that choreography. You can then interject, look at all this stuff Randy gave you. You can interject any one of these, either side, into any singing call you own. So do the math. If you own 50 singing calls, and however many he's got here, 2 versions of each, you've got a long ways. There's not a lot here for the entry-level stuff, but you could do the same thing. Michael, come on up and ask your question.
Michael Thetting again from Andrew, North Carolina. I know I'm going to make myself look like a fool, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I am stuck in a box. Literally, when I see the cue sheet, I'm stuck in a box. I see it, I can't get out of that box. What kind of advice or recommendation that I can say, break that wall down, and hey, I don't have to do a right and left through. I could do a veer left and then circulate. I hate the box I'm in, and I want to get out of it.
Think about the box on the other side of the street, the right-hand lady type thing. Instead of going always to the 0 box to the corner, use the beginning of the copyrighted royal. That puts them over there in that other box. And then play in that box for a while. That'll get your mind thinking...
Not the square dance box.
Okay.
I am stuck in a mindset.
I see. Yeah.
I would do this when Michael came up and asked me that. His cell phone was on spin chain through from the site Taminations. Does anybody in this room not heard of Taminations? Raise your hand. It is not $5. It is free. Free. It is free. Okay, so we at least have one person that doesn't know what Taminations are. Taminations, yes. Okay, thank you. No, you're not. You're the only one that admitted it. Taminations is a fellow named Brad Christie. He dances with the Tam Twirlers in Marin County, California, and he's a square dancer. Eric Hennerlaw calls for that club, and this dude is a genius. He's a square dancer, and he's got way too much time on his hands. So, did you really? Was he here? Oh, cool. What he has done is he has done a free web-based and or phone app-based, Apple or Android, where you can look up and see what a spin chain through does. So what I want you to do is when you have a moment in the hallway, if you would go to Google Play and or the Apple App Store, look up Taminations. It doesn't bite. And you can see the graphics of the dancers square dancing through using this application. He was using spin chain through. Getting back to his original question, how does he get out of thinking of that, whatever the cue sheet gives you, how do I get out of relying on it so much? Delete it. I'm serious. Delete it. Okay, because you don't have it memorized, do you? Apparently not. Okay, delete it. And you've, of course, downloaded the lyrics online. Now, of course, that's a really scary thing to do, so you're not going to do this at a dance. But you're going to pick a song or two next weekend, and you are going to not open that cue sheet, but instead you're going to have the lyrics in front of you, and you're going to listen to that music, and you're going to find where those lyrics fit. Find a few places where you can sing the song. Then you got spaces, what do I want to do with choreography? And you've already written down perhaps a couple of calls that you want to use instead of the ones you've been normally using. And then start playing with it.
Hey, Michael, I want to just say one thing to you that's maybe a little off from what you were talking about, but you said you felt like you were kind of stuck in a box there. All of us memorize certain, or we have, every caller in here has certain things in their head that they just know. It's not a matter of guessing. And I tell you something that really has stuck with me that a caller, one thing, I'm just going to give you one example. Someone asked about the columns from the column. Keep this in mind. If you have heads lead to the right and circle to a line, okay, we all know that's a partner line. We used to call it 1P, 2P, and I think they changed that, but it's a partner line. What is it?
20 years ago.
20 years ago. 20 years ago, they used to call that a one, but I was calling 20 years ago.
I still call it a 1P, 2P line, too.
John, what do you call it, John? Anyway, what I was going to say to you, you got that line, and you're in that line with your partner. And this is not a session on choreography, but if you touch a quarter from there, and if your group can do a coordinate, that's all they got to know how to do. All you've done is move the girls back one spot. Now if you bend the line, you have your corner. In an in-sequence line. You started with your partner in an in-sequence line. You touched a quarter, coordinate, bend the line. You now have everybody's in sequence, but you move the girls back one spot. If you did that all night long, if you did it again from there, touch a quarter, coordinate, you now have the opposite lady. You just moved them back. So little things like that, you can go from one spot to another and not get stuck in a certain, and you know it. You don't have to guess at it. And that's a pretty simple thing, but it works every time. It moves the girls back one spot every time.
Somebody, Michael, come up and give me the first call of your new figure that we're all going to write together. Or yell it out and I'll repeat it. So you can't use what's on that cue sheet that's bugging you. So I don't care what the call is. It has to be able to be done from a squared set.
Not square through.
Not square through. Not heads promenade. Okay, good. Heads flutter wheel. Oz, what would you do next? Sweep a quarter. Okay. John Shanks. What would you do next? Did I wake you up? Sorry. Jeff. Pass through. Where are we at? Wow, so this must have showed up somewhere. Yeah, well, yeah, because when you say heads flutter wheel on a singing call, pretty much they stare at you, but that's a whole different conversation. Okay, so what we've done is we've gotten ourselves to a corner box in a way that's other than the head square through four. Okay, cool. So at this point, we could do the swing through boys run, Ferris wheel, pass through, et cetera, et cetera. But let's not do that. So we're looking at our corner, and we've got some beats left. Has anybody kept track of the beats yet? It's pretty close. Yeah, it's pretty close to the same. Yeah, it's interesting how that works. Do we want to do a do-so-do? Do we want to? Okay. What if they're not 78? What if they're 20? What if they're 15? Of course you want to do a do-so-do. They want to do a Highland fling and kick. A doodly squat. Those are work too. Okay. So we do a do-so-do, and that kills a few more beats, and then we do our little swing through boys. But let's not do the swing through boys run thing. We go, well, you can't really do a scoot back. Well, if you, yes, okay, yes, after you do the do-so-do, the folks likely will have stepped to a wave incorrectly, and then you could call that scoot back. However, had they done the do-so-do properly, they would still be in that zero box, and it would be negligent of us to call scoot back at that point. Okay, so give me another call if you really want to call a scoot back. Give me another call. No, touch quarter's boring. Left touch a quarter. Well, we just did do-do. That'd be kind of awkward. How about step to a wave?
I was going to say touch no quarters.
How about single circle half? Is that okay? Okay, or single circle 3/4. It doesn't matter. Because, sure. Half a single circle is a quarter and a quarter of a 16. Yeah, shut up. Brian Clark, shut up. All right, so we have now done a single circle to a wave, and you got a hold of your corner. So at that point, I might consider right and left grand to a promenade home.
Would that be close to the beats? We did 10 for the all that flutter, sweep, and pass, and then we did a single circle.
We did a do-si-do.
Oh, we did a do-si-do, so that's another 6. Single circle half to a wave, that's another 6, 4. So add 10 and 10, that's 20. Right and left grand, how many beats that take, gang? 8. We're up to 28.
Let's put a do-si-do there.
34. And you add 16, and now you're up to 50, so you're still...
Okay. All right. So
all 8 spin the top. It's getting deeper now. It's
okay.
Going into the plus stuff, too.
All right, so let's do that. Let's. So that didn't work, did it? Okay. So let's go back to where we were at the corner box the first time, not the second time. We've done a heads flutter wheel, sweep a quarter, pass through. Now we're looking at them. And we know that doing a do-si-do, a single circle, and a right and left grand doesn't work, although that might be something interesting to do in a few minutes if we get them back to there. So we're about 20 beats at that point? Is that where we're at? Okay. So we've got a wave. No, I'm sorry. We've got a corner box. We do a single circle. We have a wave with the boys in the center, girls on the ends. You're holding on your corner, and everybody's in sequence.
AC, deuce, boys go twice in the right and left grand. AC, deuce, boys
go twice.
Boys go twice in the right and left grand.
So you still started the right and left grand in that same quadrant. I was thinking if you did a double circulate, then do the right and left grand, that would probably bring us back to that corner quadrant, and then the swing and promenade. I think we'd be really close.
Yeah. Now, so what did we all get out of that? Did we get a figure, or did we get a method in which we designed a figure? Because if you got a figure out of this, you're going to have a long, hard road ahead of you. If you got an idea that, hey, that right and left grand way to wind up promenading my corner home on a singing call is kind of cool, and all I have to do is utilize sufficient beats to get to somewhere I can do that, that's kind of nifty. Because you know what? You're not going to find a cue sheet that has a single circle right and left grand on it anywhere. But let's just, again, we're thinking about the lower basics. So how could we do a right and left grand figure without using a single circle? Pass through, you turn back and make a wave comes to mind. Pass through, you turn back and do a right and left grand, again, with sufficient points. So box the net. It just depends on how many calls you have instructed at these folks. If you're looking for calls for classes, your library is going to change weekly. You should reinforce the calls that you have taught. Reinforce the calls that you have taught in the singing calls. Of course you should. Which means that in addition to preparing your lesson plan, you're going to have to figure out at least one singing call figure that uses those calls every night. Now, at some point, will you get to the point where, like Elmer and myself and Randy and others, we're teaching a class, and we just are we sight calling it, or is it a distant memory? We're not quite sure. We just do it, and it works almost all the time. And when it doesn't, it's usually pretty spectacular, and we look like idiots. Okay? But that's okay. Because at one point in your career, you will realize that looking like an idiot is part of the game. Come on up. The dancers do like it.
Thank you. Robert Hurst from England. One thought that came to me when I had this conversation with somebody recently, if you're doing patter and you do, say, the head's left square through 4 and you do a left touch a quarter, in a patter you've got to know where people are. so that you know what the next move is. Because if you can't call the next move, it becomes the stop-start choreography, which we all probably do at the beginning, but then we have to get out of that routine. So if we've done the heads left square through 4, left touch a quarter, we should all know that the boys are facing out and the girls are facing in. So if we'd called then a scoot back, it would be a left scoot back with the girls going in and the boys flipping over, yeah? Well, you need that information if you're going to sight call a singing call. And it is exactly the same. But the difference between the patter and the sight calling singing call is that in the singing call, you've only got 64 beats. So you've got a little bit more work to do quickly, but it is the same concept. If you know where a move starts and ends, so you call the next move, you can sight call a singing call.
And if you know your music intimately, a lot of times myself, I can't say for these gentlemen here, but I bet you they do it, is that we realize we have made a slight whoopsie in our sight calling, singing call on the fly 64 beat choreographic judgment, and we're going to need a few more beats to get this thing untangled. So we do that, and we might even wind up taking up the 32 beats of the next figure to get to a proper swing, and so that nobody notice. And then the following figures, heads go in the middle, face your corner, and swinger and promenade. But so be it, because that's exactly how we intended it.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Yep. If you look at my handout, I just wanted to point out to you how this stuff works. The first page is all mainstream, and then everything after that is plus. And if you look at the second one on the left-hand box, it says head square through 4, do-si-do, swing through, and the tag, and the clover, and the girl square through 3. You see that? All right, I think we've all used that singing call figure, and we've had pretty good success. It could be a little hairy for the girls to do a square through 3, but very rarely do you see the opposite of where you have the boys doing the square through 3. And if you do that, you'll notice that you're doing a left square through 4. Well, if you're a little shaky and worried that they're not going to get a left square through 4, just do a slide through and a square through 3. They're going to make that, and then their left hand is ready, or you can do the left swing through, and depending on the timing, you might leave off the do-si-do, the left do-si-do, but you're still going to do a left swing through, and instead of having the boys run right, you got the girls run left. Instead of a normal tag, you could still call a normal tag there, but it feels better with a left tag, doesn't it? Then cloverleaf, and then the boys square through 3. It took me 50 years of doing this before I realized I know twice as much as what I did when I started, because all I had to do was just think like reversed or mirror or something magical clicked on in my head and said, hey, I can do it from the other side of the coin. If you're going to start circling left, you're going to certainly teach them how to circle right. And if you do this, we become more creative. We keep the interest of the dancers. We don't spoon feed everything, and all of a sudden they're having fun and it's smooth, and they're having to listen to you. You're not trying to challenge them or break them down. You just want them to listen and go through these singing call figures. There's hundreds of them here, and use what you want, but again, think judgment.
One of the things that you will find, you may find it soon, you may find it late, but our dancers, the people that we're involved with on a weekly basis, are going to be as good or as bad as we teach them to be. We've all said, I've got some people in my class that just can't, blah, 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 blah. If you've got 90% of your class that's having success with what you're trying, and a small, tiny percentage of folks that are having struggling issues, okay, maybe there's a hard of hearing issue, maybe there's a mobility issue, maybe they just aren't, maybe they just be better at bowling. Okay, it happens. But if 90% of your class is struggling, it's you. It is you. Same thing when you're calling a dance. If you look upon the floor and you see that you've got one square going and the other 9 are standing there, in addition to never being hired back, you're going to have just completely offended quite a few people. This thing needs a battery. So anyway, I'd say just if anybody's got a question.
We got 5 minutes or so before we break out. If anybody's got questions, come on up.
You're gonna have to come up this court.
Put them on the microphone. Before we start the question and answer stuff, though, how about a nice hand for our panelists, Elmer and Rick?
We were talking about doing it different ways. My name is Mike Driscoll from Minnesota. We were talking about doing it different ways. How about four ladies chain first, and then work in the opposite box? Or how about a right-hand rotation in your singing calls?
I'd love to hear some of you guys that are standing back there with questions.
Yeah.
Mike's working. Well,
Yeah,
maybe.
there it is.
Okay.
Mike's comment about how about a right-hand lady progression. If you do that in Texas, I guarantee you're going to have trouble because a lot of times these people, they know they're going to get that corner, and if they messed up somewhere along the way, they make shortcut 10, 20 beats off of your figure, and they'll just go grab that corner and take her home.
Yeah, we can't reinvent anything. I would love to hear from some of the people that have not been on the mic yet, so please, no question is dumb.
Clarification from a native Texan. He lives down in South Texas. I call right-hand lady progressions all the time and don't have no problem with it in Texas.
Yeah, I'm talking about
And
retirement.
maybe
What's your name, sir?
My name is John Jones, and I'm a native Texan.
Appreciate your comment.
And
they say the first step is admitting it. They say the first step is admitting it.
And damn proud of it. I have a different viewpoint with regard to the timing sheet for you as a new caller. And I've been on a kick about this for a long time. Of all the singing calls that start with either heads promenade half or heads square through 4. You'll hear my report Wednesday, tomorrow, about this. And one of you said you can look at 1,000 records and or 7 different figures that you put together.
Yes.
All for 1,000 records or so, whatever it might happen to be. It's really sad to me to see that over and over and over again. Take the timing sheet and make a different figure work out to the same timing. Head square through 4 from a static square takes 10 beats. Figure out something, and if you have a do-si-do in the corner, you may have to leave it out. Do a right and a left through and a half sachet and a slide through, and check your timing sheet to see if it works. And then with the timing sheet in a training session that we just did at home and had the callers write singing call figures, newer callers. And one caller, he got up to do his singing call, and all at once he ran out of music and he still had figure to go. Well, he's in the next 64-beat segment of the singing call, and he hadn't checked his figure with his timing sheet. We helped him rewrite that with the timing sheet to make sure that it fit the music.
Yeah, well, I'm not trying to say we should, dumb down that. That's very, very important. I challenge each and every one of you, the next dance you call, if you're doing singing calls at that particular dance, challenge yourself to never promenade half or square through 4.
There you go. I think we have a question over there.
Okay.
I'm a new caller, same as us. Barry McCombs, Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And something I just ran into lately was trying to figure out where to put the command words in a particular phrase. Figuring we got 64 beats, there's usually, 8-beat sections. And sometimes they need a little bit more time. So I'm wondering if the panelists have any hints for getting that command word right at the start of the 8-beat section you've got, or a little bit later in the 8-beat section.
I would say to be sure, at the very least, that you get the command word on a beat to start with. As a newer caller and as a smart caller, you're going to be watching your floor, and if they are not on your beat, well, then you'd better get on their beat. So if it takes 12 or 14 beats or 20 beats for them to do a square through, that's not their problem, that is your problem. So, again, if you're sitting down here looking at choreography or looking at a cue sheet and you're not watching the dancers out in front of you, you run the great risk of having a bunch of people staring at you getting angrier by the second because they're not square dancing and you're up here singing karaoke looking at a laptop screen.
And, a lot of us that record are guilty of, maybe not guilty, maybe it's the way the song is written, but I'm sure you've seen songs that you has a sides face grand square, for instance, in the middle or on the closer, and yet your tagline that you're singing takes up all of the beats of the music. In other words, if you sing whatever, rolling in my sweet baby's arms, if it takes all that to end, and then you right into a lot of guys, rolling in my sweet sides face, grand square. I don't like that kind of stuff myself. To me, it takes away from the song. But you got to get that command in there for whether you're looking at the figure or the break or whatever. The dancers have to have time, to know what's coming. You can't wait till you sing the whole thing and then try to throw it in there. It just won't work.
We've already gotten rid of promenades on singing calls anyway. We never say them, which is perhaps why folks don't do them. But I think everybody agrees, dancers and callers, if you're singing in a singing call and you're not promenading and nothing else is happening, that perhaps you should move. Be that good or bad, it just is.
Answer your question, Bruce, more or less? Up on the mic.
I was thinking not so much in terms of when you're out on the floor, but where it came from was I recently was doing a figure thinking, hey, I got this. And believe it or not, it was the copyright figure you've told me about. So I did it one night because I'm allowed one tip a night with our regular caller and teach and then call a tip. So gave them the standard, broke down. They just they couldn't get through that even though I was dead on the music saying what the copyright figure said. So caller said, well, that ain't going to work. Take it home and tear it apart, put something else in there to make it work, as you folks have talked about. Well, I come back the next week, apply it on a different tune. Well, this darn time, they weren't behind. I had time. I'd taken out so much that they were sitting around. A week later, I call it at a beginner dance, and these folks were working hard, but the same figure worked beautifully because they had time to recover when they were making their own mistakes. Not my fault. So I was kind of wondering more when you're sitting and writing, reconfiguring something, as you've said, and you're taking out some beats here and there, just giving them more time on the calls that need it that are 12 beat or 16 beats, as opposed, just getting it in so they have enough time to do what it is, but still keep the flow of your voice as you're going through.
Do-si-do is a really nice optional call.
Yep. Of course, when you're watching and you're doing the copyright figure, if you do it the first time and they don't make it because they can't get through it, cut the promenade out and the square through out and put a pass the ocean and extend or pass the ocean step through or square through two, then see how it works out for the rest of them. If they're still got time left, like what Rick says, instead of swing the corner do-si-do or pass through and you turn back or something else to take up just a few more beats. Okay? Thank you, Barry. Any other questions? Uh-oh.
Yeah, Brian Clark from Vancouver, Canada. This isn't really a question. It's more of a warning, I guess. If you're going to reconfigure your singing call figures and write something, as a caller who used to write lots of stuff, doesn't write anymore because I found that when I write stuff, it's just way too darn evil. The one thing you need to look at is you need to look at the frequency of the calls that you're doing. And when you're calling, say, plus, and you say, oh, well, I want to do this plus figure and this plus figure and this plus figure, and if you put them, stack them one after the other, unfortunately, the dancers can't dance that. Even though you've timed it out correctly, they can't dance it well, and so they'll break down. You need to sort of intersperse it with something a little bit easy so that they're able to make it through.
Good comment. I'm mentoring a caller down in Arizona during the summertime, and I let him do a tip at my dances, usually before the lesson or after or whatever, and then I critique him. But he's still in the vinyl stage, and so he's using all records, and he's got all these old songs that were recorded at about 132 to 100 and whatever, so they're really, really fast. He's using exactly the same figures, which were timed so close that when you're working with a class, they don't have a chance to making it. And I've tried to get him to figure out how to leave off the do-si-dos or rewrite and reconfigure things. And if you're using the old records, beware. 25 years ago, we were dancing a lot different. We were all 25 years younger, and everything was different in those days. I remember when Elmer did that song, it was one of the first times I was working with Elmer, and we shared a room together. And it was right after he recorded "If I Said You Had a Beautiful Body, Would You Hold It Against Me?" the Bellamy Brothers. And I'm dancing right in front, underneath the stage there, and Elmer's looking right at me, and I'm with this 90-year-old lady dancing with her, and she looks right at me and looks in my eyes and says, "Anytime."
It happens.
That'll be my most enjoyable moment with Elmer Sheffield, okay? Well, it's time to break. Thank you, guys. Hope you learned something.
Thank you.
Don't forget, if you don't have a handout, we have them up here. Any extra handouts in the back, bring them to the front, please.